Welcome back to the SC Halfback Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Namowski. Welcome to another off-season pod again on the Team Picker. Today we are doing another team. We are going to be doing a pretty fun one. The one injury away team. These are the guys that, if something was to happen during the season, they're probably one picking order down where if they can get that crack, they may not give up that spot and be a really nice Supercoach value. So this is a bit of a deep dive for draft, but I think as well for classic, some guys you could potentially start with and just hope that potentially there's one injury away. You can jump on there or be ready for where there is a trade. If you do hear that name come up in the media, this guy's ready to debut, you can jump on it pretty quickly. So let's get right into it. 10 minutes on the clock. Let's go to the hooker. Probably the easiest. There's two guys here that you just really want to be a part of this season. So we have Gordon Chan Kum Tong as our first one, and then we're going to the West Tigers for Talon Silva. So both guys at 238k. Guys that I think both will be on the bench for round one. I think Gordon's obviously a great chance to have a lot more line share of the minutes with Lachlan Croker. But I like them both. And again, I think they're great stashes in a draft league. Your last guy on the bench, why not? Why not throw it? If you're not going to AE, it's a really nice play where you can kind of get one of these guys. And if they do get a hit, I think there's at least a 45-point averaging hooker in both of these guys here. So go grab them nice and early. And again, they can easily be your second hooker if you are running the Harry Grant as your gun. Let's go to the front row forward and let's go grab our first guys here. So we're going to go to the Sydney Roosters first, Spencer Lanu at 332,000. Obviously, there's a couple of guys ahead of him in the pecking order. You'd think, obviously, May, Collins, and Hargreaves are the guys there. But if for whatever reason Hargreaves is suspended or Collins is on Origin, all of a sudden I think Spencer can be in for some pretty big bulk minutes there. Next one's one of my fan favorites, Tom Hazelton of the Sharks at 358k. Someone who I just think that there's obviously a lot of forwards in that pack, and obviously Adam coming in next year. I think all these forwards are going to be really wanting to gun for their place in the spot next year. And I think this is one of the guys that can really do it. He's obviously got a bit of try scoring knack about him. And I think if they do put some bulk minutes into him, he can do the job pretty well. On the bench, one of my favorites at Parramatta. Let's go to Wirimu Greg of the Parramatta Eels at 315k. If anything happens to Junior Paolo or Regan Campbell-Gillard, he's someone you can easily jump on. I think there's a big Supercoach scorer in here. A guy that can go 50 plus. Just needs the opportunity. So I do like his options for this season. And then to finish it off in the front row, let's go to Xavier Willison of the Broncos at 265k. Someone who I can just see, the Broncos get a little bit of injuries. I think he can step in there and do a really nice job there. Let's go into the tour. There's a few guys I want to talk about in here. First guy, Billy Burns of the Sharks, starts at 586k. I just think he's a 55-point second row forward in Supercoach. And if he does take out Wilton on the starting side, I think it's going to be a really good play where he can go on that edge and, similar to what Nikora does, he can do a bit of a discount job on that other edge. So I don't mind that at all. The next guy I want to talk about, Mason Teague of the Dolphins at 238k. I'm just ready for it to happen. He's just such a good footy player from when I look at him. I think he can hit a beautiful line, and I just think that what he's going to do this season, if he does get a spot, obviously there's a few guys in the pecking order. You got Kafusi, Bromwich, Lemuelu. There's a few guys on that edge that will probably start over him, but I just think he's got a really nice chance this season. Next guy to talk about, Morgan Smithies of the Canberra Raiders at 345k. Obviously coming over he's got a bit of a reputation being a bit of a workhorse in the Super League. If he can come over, there's a one or two injuries or suspensions in this Raiders pack. I think it's a big chance for him to shine this year, so would not be surprised if that does happen. Next guy, Corey Waddell of the Manly Seagulls, 492k. If he does beat out Josh Schuster on that edge, which I think is a real possibility, on that edge with Brooks and Garrick and Turbo at the back, I think a lot of Supercoach points. He's just a very competent scorer in Supercoach. That 45 average is very easy for him to hit week in, week out. So I do like Corey Waddell as a bit of a draft stash, but also if he does get the nod in round one in Classic, he can be in quite a few different teams. Next guy, Tallis Duncan of the South Sydney Rabbitohs, 321k. Again, all you need is a few injuries in that Rabbits pack, and they can get pretty thin pretty quickly. And I think Tallis Duncan, This is probably his third season in grade now. I think he can make the most of his chances and have a really good season. So I do like Tallis Duncan as a bit of a lucky play there. And then the last guy, obviously we're all waiting for it to happen for him, Jack Howarth of the Melbourne Storm. Lost that jewel that we all love, but 238K, got that 1 game minimum at the end of the season. I just think that Trent Liera is more of a middle, and if you can put Howarth on that edge next to Cam Munster, um, I think good things can happen. So I'm hoping for Jack Howarth. He will be a lot of people's starting sides to start the season, and I think there's a real chance for him to play. Let's get down into the halves. All right. So the first half we're going to discuss here is they actually both got Warriors emblems next to them, but one has moved on. So let's go first to Chanel Harris Tavita, 238K. I think he will get the starting six jersey, and I think he'll do really well there. And if he does get that jewel to start the season, he will be my 5'8" number two. So I'm really happy to see Chanel Harris Tavita back in the league. Someone who I just think is a natural footy player and has a lot of Supercoach scoring about him. So I do like that, especially walking back into this Warrior side that he missed out on last year. And then someone who can easily take the 5'8" position at the Dragons, Ronald Volkman at 238K. I think that he's a real chance to get Kyle Flanagan out of that seat. Kyle Flanagan, I can see going into the 14 role to spell Jacob Little and be a bit of a utility on the bench. I think Volkman has a really nice shot for that 5'8" slot. And again, if he gets a duel and can start, someone who you can have to seriously look at in the 5'8" slot there. The two 5'8s we will go with here. First one, we're going to go to Dane Laurie of the Penrith Panthers, fullback 5'8" dual, 515K. If anything happens to Jerome Luai or Nathan Cleary, I'll suspect that he would be the next man up. Obviously, Brad Schneider is there as well, but what you saw last year at the Tigers, he obviously had a very inconsistent team around him, still averaged that 50 mark, has a lot of scoring about him, so I do like him this season. And then at the West Tigers, Ladu Finu. If anything does happen to Caesar or Sullivan, you would expect that Latu will be the next guy up, and all the hype about him in the lower grades, you just have to jump on and see what happens there. So I don't mind that play at all. Let's go into the CTWs. The first guy here to talk about, Talatal Kula of the Manly Sea Eagles, CTW fullback dual, 581K. If Tommy Turbo goes down, I think he will be the next fullback in line over Ruben Garrick. And what you saw those last two games, it tells you everything you need to know. He's someone who can score in bunches and do a really good job for you. The next guy to discuss, Junior Pauga of the Sydney Roosters at 505K. Again, obviously Billy Smith probably ahead of him in the pecking order, but if anything does happen or injury suspensions hit, he showed last season in those 7 games with a 55 average that he's someone who can easily um, do a very good job for you. And I think at 500K, if he does get a spot somehow, could be a very nice play at some stage during the season, especially in a draft comp. Again, one of those guys you just want to stash on that bench and wait for it to happen. Next guy, let's go to Paul Alamotti of the Penrith Panthers. If Talamay can't lock down that centre spot, I would suspect that Alamotti is the next man up. There's been reports they want to move him into the 2RF, which again, I don't mind that at all because again, he'll then probably get a duel and at 414K. If it does happen, come off the bench, lose a bit of cash. If anything happens to Liam Martin, goes to Origin duty, Scott Sorensen, something happens to him, all of a sudden there, you get a bit of value. And then the last guy to talk about here in the CTW starting side, Deloise Hoyter of the Brisbane Broncos, 414K. Just every time he kind of comes in and I see him on the screen, just looks like someone who belongs in first grade. So obviously had the 1 game last year for 58, but I just think he's in for a decent season if he can get any extended minutes ahead of Jordan Pereira there. On the bench, a couple of guys to discuss here. So we obviously got Suafalongo, someone who I think will be in the round one side somewhere, whether it's on the bench, whether it's on the wing. I think he's going to be too good to leave out of this side, similar to Pappenhausen those couple of years previous. Going to the Cowboys, and this is a guy I really hope gets picked in the round one team list, Viliami Vailea. I just think at the Warriors had a couple of cracks there, but I think in that Cowboys team can have a real, if he's inside Semi Valame, and obviously got Drinkwater coming around that side too, could be a bit of magic there. So I don't mind Vialia is a bit of a stash play. And then the guy who's all been waiting for in the CTW, Ty Munro. If he gets a spot, fantastic. I kind of feel like they're going to give it a task first, and Munro will need to keep working his way through and wait for an injury. But once he gets that spot at 483K, um, he'll be very highly drafted in draft just because they want to get him in the side and do a bit of a stash. And I think in Classic as well, that's a nice price where you could downgrade someone if once he gets in, and there'd be a bit of movement there. And then two of my absolute favorite juniors coming through right now that I think I put in the fullback slot. So first of all, Kade Dykes of the Cronulla Sharks. Now, I was on the record last season before his injury. I thought he would have superseded Will Kennedy into that fullback spot some stage during the season. I still think that could potentially happen this season. I just think he's a really good footy player, and even just like his old man, he can even go into the halves if Trindle goes down. So I do like Kade Dykes as a stash. I will definitely have him in as many draft leagues as possible. I will also have this guy, Keanu Kinney, 287K. He's obviously the third fullback in line behind Brimson, and you've also got Jaden Campbell. But to me, I really, really want to have him because if he does get a crack at some stage, whether it's on the wing or a fullback at some stage during the season, I want to have him in my team. So those are the fullbacks, two guys I'm really excited about, Dykes and Kinney. So let's just quickly run through this team before we sign off here. So we got Gordon with Talon De Silva at hooker. We got Lanu, Hazleton, Grigg, and Willison in the front row. Burns, Teague, Smithies, Waddell, Duncan, and Howarth in the 2RF. Tavita and Volkman in the halves. Dane Laurie and Latu Fainu in the 5'8" role. Kula, Pauga, Alamotti, Hoita, Failongo, Vialia, and Munro in the CTW, with Dykes and Kinney at fullback. And again, guys, these are guys that you really want to keep an eye on because I think with one or two injuries or suspensions, these guys will be very big players in the Supercoach season for 2024. So keep an eye out for them. And I think you will be able to draft them at some stage, pick them up in Classic, and they'll do a very, very good job for you. We'll leave it there, guys. Get to the socials at the SC Halfback. This team will be posted up again. A lot of players we have not spoken about, so it's very nice to talk about some players and get those thoughts going of where we could potentially get them at some stage during the season. But thank you for listening. Have a great day, and we'll hear from you soon. Cheers.